What's the best thing about the U.S.? Story 1. The national parks are on a different level of simply amazing. I live in Utah and our national parks look like you landed on a different planet. Been to them a few times and I'm always awestruck. The U.S. has 762,000 square kilometers of just national forests, not even national parks. That's equivalent to France and Bulgaria combined for just forests. State parks and beaches are also worth visiting. Many have no/low admission fees. New York has a ton of top-notch state parks that could be easily national parks and monuments had the government owned that land first. Includes the Adirondacks, Catskills, Niagara Falls, Letchworth, Taganic Falls, most of Ithaca, Watkins Glen, Allegheny, some parks on Lakes Ontario and Erie. There's a lot of beauty there that is not just New York City. Story 2. Wide open. Space. Seriously. Go west and you can get to places that are so remote and so beautiful, with big blue skies during the day and star-filled nights. My college town was in the middle of nowhere, just rolling plains for tens of miles. It was so serene for me. My brain loves cities and their efficiency, but my soul needs nature. It was a fad in the 1700s and 1800s to make universities islands of learning. Most people who went to college then were sons of rich families. They were often too easily distracted by urban pleasures like taverns, brothels, and racetracks. By building a university in the middle of nowhere, it was thought that those distractions could be avoided. It also helped that land was much cheaper in the middle of nowhere versus in the heart of cities. A starry western night sky in a remote spot is a stunning experience. My now wife and I, while dating, took a trip up Wolf Creek Pass in Colorado one night. Just parked the car and laid out on the ground and counted satellites and meteors, actually seeing the Milky Way. One of my favorite date nights ever. I grew up in Nevada. You could drive 30 minutes in any direction and be in a completely different climate and the views are stunning. Seeing the Milky Way from the middle of the empty desert is still awe-inspiring to me. Nature has always been an American go-to. It's our strongest tourist pull. Teddy really did give America an incredible investment with his natural park conservation. Everybody say it together, the national parks. Always the #1 response on these reposted Best Thing About America posts. Story 3. The Americans with Disabilities Act is seriously some of the best handicap accessibility protection in the world. A paraplegic person can wheel themselves into pretty much any commercial building in the country and be confident that there will be ramps in all the right places and a restroom they can use. If there aren't, there are powerful legal tools to make it happen. That's not the case in a lot of places in the world, and it wasn't that long ago that it wasn't the case here. A lot of people will wrongly criticize it for being overcomplicated, but it's pretty brilliant. Instead of just saying any building with stairs needs an elevator, they base it on things like square footage, etc., which creates less workarounds to avoid it. Most gripes about ADA complexity are due to the fact that it doesn't leave 1,000,001 loopholes to avoid compliance. If you are disabled, the U.S. is insanely accommodating. I haven't seen any other country top it yet. I was lucky enough to do some European travel last year and was amazed at the architecture. But I also started to wonder how someone in a wheelchair would go anywhere in many of the cities. They couldn't get hardly anywhere. It also was a point of note in one place. A beach had recently updated to have ramp access, and there was a group out publicizing their work to get the beach wheelchair accessible. I gained some respect for the U.S. in that trip. Both places have their benefits, to be sure, but the ADA has transformed our country for the better. Having lived in Southeast Asia for the last couple of years, disability rights and accessibility is pretty amazing in the United States. Also, people on both the right and the left feel like the sky is falling in America, but again, living outside the United States, you realize how good most people have it. Now, this is not some America is #1 type rant. America is not perfect, and a lot of its criticism has at least some merit. But if you genuinely believe you weren't lucky to have been born here, all I have to tell you is that will change if you visit a developing country and see with your own eyes how like 90 to 95% of the rest of the world's population lives. Story 4. I feel like entertainment is something the U.S. does extremely well. Want to go to a show? The U.S. has you covered regardless of how niche your taste is. I love that this also varies by city. You can find all kinds of shows or events, but cities tend to have their own specialties. Story 5. I really like the diversity in this country. How anyone can be an American, and you have no idea who is American and who is not. That's my favorite thing. You have no idea who is just sightseeing, who is visiting family, who is here on a student visa versus who is actually American. So, until someone says otherwise, we are going to assume you are American. Doesn't matter how thick your accent is. Doesn't matter how you dress. You are American until otherwise noticed. Also, I love how quickly we adopt things from our immigrants and declare it American. It's like, what are you eating? Let me try some of that. Oh, God, this is delicious. Go open up a restaurant. More people should be eating this. And now it's part of the American fabric. I love how the American tongue is such a mutt language. How quickly we adapt non-English words and more often than not pronounce them how they would be pronounced in their native tongue. We don't try make them more English like the way the French will French up foreign words. I like how it's easy to correct an American by saying, it's actually pronounced this way. And they will have a go at trying to say it correctly rather than huff and puff and try to make you change the way you say it. Language is so adaptable here. It's far more forgiving than other languages. You can butcher it up here, and as long as we understand the idea of what you are trying to convey, you will get a pass. I think it's why it is such a juggernaut on a global stage. Yes, we have language rules, but the native speakers will mostly ignore them in order to communicate better. I have pretty much the same thoughts on the English language. Many people get mad that English is spoken by so many, but it is in part because the language is forgiving. I am learning French and German. German is not forgiving. They always make me switch to English. French I do not know, haven't tried speaking it to a native speaker yet. France has a whole council whose only job is to keep the language pure. That's all you need to know when it comes to how forgiving French is, at least in that country. I don't know how French is in the French part of Canada. If they mix it up there or they try to be like France. If any Canadians can speak up on this, we are all ears. One statement you made is my favorite part of the US. You can move to Japan, completely go through the steps to naturalize as a citizen, but you'll never be considered Japanese. That's not the case in the US. You come here, become a citizen, you are an American. Story 6. I moved to Germany almost 3 years ago and I can tell you what I miss, how friendly Americans are. When I visit my parents in Germany, the friendliest person to me is the immigrant dude who sells kebab outside an Edeka. German guy in my office always mentions how chipper and happy people act here. Same here. I love Germany, but people here are really uninterested in talking to people outside of their established social circles. Every time I go back to the States, I end up chatting with every single person I interact with, just because it's so nice to have a friendly conversation with a stranger. And I'm a pretty introverted person. Lived in Germany for a long while, I feel your pain. The interesting thing about Germans, they don't put on a mask for social interactions. They let you know. They aren't expected to fake being nice and culturally are a little more reserved. So they aren't going to be all smiles and acting like they're your friend when they don't know you. They need time to warm up to you and they aren't hiding that. From what I understand, Germans take more time to develop friendships than Americans, but once they're your friend, they are friends for life. They don't really have friendly acquaintances like Americans do. So it takes more time with Germans, but you know where you stand with them. Story 7. Our neighbor down the road fled Sudan in the 1980s and made it to the US as a refugee. She lost her father, 2 brothers, and most of her extended family as they were related to the wrong political leader that was killed. Her mother and 2 sisters arrived with literally nothing in the late 80s. She is now a nurse making $100,000 a year, married to a firefighter with 3 kids, living on a property with 8 acres and a 5-bedroom house. One sister is a school teacher and the other manages a Barnes & Noble. That is pretty cool. It might seem anecdotal, but this is it. Millions of stories of people who came here for a better future and made it happen. Very few places in the world can facilitate that. The US is definitely one of them. USA is a great place to be an engineer. We pay our engineers better than any other country. If you can get a relatively inexpensive degree in engineering, then you can most likely swing middle class no problem. Then you can tell everyone I'm an engineer, while you overanalyze an incredibly simple problem. I love it. Or if you're an electrical engineer, you can dismiss it by saying you only solve imaginary problems. Source: am electrical engineer. It's pretty much wizardry. The only hard and fast rule in electrical engineering is don't let the smoke out. Same with marine biology. Marine biologists make pennies in the EU compared to the US. I'm a developer in Seattle and looked into moving to Canada. Then I looked at how much developers get paid in Vancouver. No thanks. A 50% pay cut is probably not worth whatever it is that Canada offers. Similar boat here. My husband gets emails sometimes from Canadian and British companies, and as much as I would love to spend more time in different parts of the world, the pay cuts would be too big. It was a little shocking how little companies in London were offering, considering that London isn't exactly a low cost of living area. Story 7. I hear the barbecue is pretty good. All of our regional cuisine is pretty on point. Barbecue itself has several major regional varieties: Kansas City, Memphis, Texas, Carolina. Then there's the PNW and New England with the seafood, chowder, and lobster. And then there are some areas where you can find some of the best of every food you can imagine. Like the NYC metro area / northern New Jersey with its diverse immigrant communities giving us the best pizza, Latin American cuisines, Indian, Polish, Korean, just about anything you can think of. It hurts being from New Jersey though, since you're going to be disappointed with 9/10 of the pizza you try when you travel anywhere outside of the general NJ / New York area. 1. It has almost every climate / terrain you can think of: desert, forest, tropical, mountains, etc. 2. Anything is possible mentality. As someone from Europe, I find we are stuck in our ways and hold on to tradition a lot more than Americans. This is cool in some ways, but can hold us back in terms of ingenuity when it comes to things like food and technology. The Americans aren't afraid to put pineapple on pizza, for example, whereas you would be chased out of Naples for trying such a thing. 3. Highest cultural output of any country in the world. Most trends in movies, technology, and music can be traced back to America. People slam on America for not having a deep-rooted culture, and though that isn't exactly true, Cajun, Creole, Native American, Western/cowboy, etc., it does provide a great breeding ground for some amazing cultural combinations because of that. It can clearly be seen in our food, slang, music, and media. If I don't like where I live, I can go somewhere thousands of miles away that has completely different laws, culture, and climate and don't have to get anyone's permission to do so. Yeah, this. If you want to live in the middle of nowhere with very little interference from other people and or the government, you can do that. If you want to live in a more regimented society where lots of rules are in place and enforced for the betterment of society as a whole, you can do that too. And then there's everything in between too. The breadth of the American experience is significant and not something that you'll find in a lot of other countries. Story 8. Huge variety of grocery products. Back in the 80s, I was childhood friends with a family who were newly immigrated from Russia, and their mom took hours and hours to grocery shop because there were so many things. Whenever we played at their house, her mom would very proudly tell us we could have grape or strawberry or orange jam in our peanut butter sandwiches. Then she would say things like, "You're so lucky." When I was little, maybe we had jam, maybe not. As someone who lived for an extended time abroad, we definitely have a vast grocery selection. I think it's in part to so many cultures and nationalities living here and ensuring that you can prepare meals that are authentic to those cultures should you desire to mix it up. The dirtier and more broken down it is, the more you know the food will be the bomb. Some hole-in-the-wall place that basically looks like an abandoned house will sell you the tastiest southern food ever. Story 9. Public libraries are awesome. A lot of libraries in the States organize events and let you organize clubs and have all kinds of resources for all kinds of people. Not to mention subscriptions for ebooks and other digital content. Being abroad has really made me stop taking this for granted. Story 10. The ability to get in your vehicle and drive wherever you want to see the vast natural beauty of the U.S. and to experience the diversity of different regions and ways of life. The national and state park systems and other protected areas are truly unbelievable and one of my favorite things about the U.S. So let's keep them protected. Yeah, we got a ton of issues here and much of the good stuff isn't unique to the U.S. But the variety of the landscape, the vastness of it all, is hard to beat. Kayaking around the Everglades or Atchafalaya, hiking through Zion or Yosemite, the astounding peacefulness when you lose yourself in the Redwoods or Olympic, wandering the Acadia or Big Sur coastline, camping in Yellowstone or the Smoky Mountains, taking an open Jeep through Joshua Tree or Death Valley. Just endless possibilities. My opinion, opportunity. In spite of all of its faults, America is still a country that offers some of the best opportunity to find work and being able to survive and even prosper. I've spent some time overseas in some rougher places when I was in the military, and while I recognize that we're not perfect and we can do better, I'm still thankful for the opportunities we have here. Story 11. I beg people to get off Reddit and actually spend time in their neighborhoods or actually talk to people. Americans are incredibly resilient, hardworking people who always want to see improvement. We know we're not perfect. The smallest story about America bad will flood the front page, and anything seen as success is treated as the ills of capitalism and America. If you visit any American city, you'll see that it's very progressive, and people are happy, polite, and want everyone to be who they are. It's easy to get trapped in the clickbait headlines, but remember that Reddit is a big karma farm and doesn't reflect real life. I came from a very poor upbringing, a large urban public school, and was able to graduate college and create a pretty comfortable life for myself. I'm not rich by any means, but my life is pretty good. I don't think I could have had this life if I lived in other parts of the world. Visit an American park on a Saturday. At least where I live you'll find diversity, natural resources, friendly people, families, and no judgment. We're not what the extreme right wants us to be, and we never will. We don't wait for the government to do something for us. If we want something, we build it. And if people like it, they support it. You can't stop an ambitious American. I'll kindly accept your downvotes now. National parks, customer service, and jazz. Oh, and Americans are pretty damn friendly. Variety of landscapes, lifestyles, and culture. You can choose a region/state that suits you and your lifestyle/beliefs. You are free to be. While in no way is the US perfect, no place really is, and there are a lot of weird people, and we need to fix our healthcare system, it still has a lot going for it. Variety is the spice of life. If you want food, anything you can imagine from any country on earth, we have it, prepared by natives of that country. If you want to go to the beach and go skiing on the same day, we can make that happen. If you want to move out to the woods where your nearest neighbor is 20 miles away, we can do that. Broadly speaking, the level of quality is high in many areas of daily life: white-collar jobs, music, movies, TV shows, national parks, sports, doctors, ADA, technology, brands, university education, and so on. Obviously, there are many areas of low quality that need to be addressed: policing, insurance, etc., but Americans tend to take for granted the general goodness of many things.